Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Indra. If you've ever stood in a dusty corner of a flea market or even a vintage shop holding a stunning piece and wondering, is this piece 100 years old or is it more like a 1990s modern reproduction simply made to look old? Then this video is for you. We're going to be looking at 4 incredible pieces from my own collection. I'll teach you how to tell the era, the country of origin, and the real value of the pieces that you're holding. And I also have some very exciting news because everything that is on the table today, including one piece that is not on the screen just yet, will be available for purchase this March when Maison Amaranth officially launches with worldwide shipping. So definitely stay tuned for that until the end. So let's start with a classic. This is the Opaque Lunéville. And when you look at the bottom, you see a beautiful, somewhat faded green crest with a crown. But notice what is missing. There is no country name. So in the world of antiques, what is absent is often more important than what is present. The biggest clue here is the missing word, which is supposed to be France. So to understand why this is happening, we basically have to go back in time and take a look at the global economy of the late 19th century. In 1890, the United States passed the McKinley Tarrif Act, which went into effect in 1891. So now what does this mean? Before this law was invented, European factories such as the one in Lunéville, they didn't feel the need to stamp the word France on their goods. They were proud of their factory crest and they assumed that the world would simply know where they are located. However, the US government wanted to protect its own growing industries and they basically passed this act to force all import goods to be clearly marked with their country of origin so that American consumers clearly can know and tell the difference between what is foreign and what is not. So what this means for you as a collector, and this is where it starts to get really, really interesting. If the mark says just the name, Lunéville, or anything else, for that matter, that is not a country, it almost certainly predates to before 1891. If the stamp or the mark does say the country, for example, France or United Kingdom, it was likely made between 1891 and 1914. Whereas if it says made in France or made in Spain, you are usually looking at a piece that was made after 1914, when the laws became even more strict. So when we look at this mark, the fact that it stands alone without France tells us that we are likely holding a piece from the 1880s. So by looking at the mark, we already found out 2 very important details about this piece, which is the country of origin and the era. And now when you take a closer look at the foot of the tureen, you can basically find that there is impressed numbers and there is a 64 or 61 mark. And this was basically the potter's way of keeping track of the mold size. Next up is this gorgeous blue tureen. And this one actually has one of the rarest marks you'll ever find. So this piece doesn't actually have a factory mark. It actually has the mark of the retailer. So when you take a look at this mark, you can see that it says located at 90 Rue de Rivoli, and it also says Au Lion de Fayence, Paris. So when you search the information that you can find on the mark, for this specific case, you'll find that it basically belonged to a store that opened in 1700s, and this specific 90 Rue de Rivoli location was their peak during the Belle Époque period. By looking at the pattern name that also is said on the mark, it says Sebastopol. We can narrow it down even further. So Sebastopol was a famous battle in the 1850s. So after this period, patterns were named specifically after this, and it remained fashionable for decades. And what we also were able to find out is that this shop basically ended all of its activity in 1929 during the global economic shift. So this gives us a timeline of certainty, while it is kind of impossible to know the specific year unless it would actually state it on the piece itself, which rarely happens. This does give us the information that was definitely from between roughly 1880 to 1914. And now we move on to the next gorgeous tureen that doesn't have a lid, by the way, that includes these gorgeous lion head handles on both sides, which was basically to hold it properly like this. And I found this in a consignment shop in France. So this one is a completely different case than the ones we've studied before. And let me tell you why. So when you take a look at the stamp right over here, it actually has a very clear and crisp green circle where it also clearly says France. The fact that it states the country on this piece immediately tells us that we are looking at a piece from the 20th century. But here is a major point that I want to share with you guys that is maybe very obvious but kind of unspoken of, is to read, read, and read. I spent hours Googling and researching every specific piece that I get from my own shop. So I basically spent some time looking into what FD means and what it stands for. And what I found for free online is basically a 100-year family saga. So when you see FD, you are looking at the initials of Fernand Dessoulières. His family has been making porcelain since the 1800s, but this specific stamp was only born in 1906. By simply digging into the French family histories, we can track almost the exact life cycle of this tureen. So in 1935, the maker Chauvigny bought the famous Opaque brand. Basically, since then, it went from a household supplier to a luxury bistro supplier. And in 1966, the grandson of Fernand, Yves, took over. He wanted to modernize. He started phasing out the FD initials in favor of just Dessoulières France. So because our tureen still has these initials, what does it tell us? We can confidently place it before 1966. And the last information that we found is that the family actually sold the company in 2002 to a famous Russian factory. So any mark like this basically means that there will be no pieces made like this anymore. So this research did not cost me a penny. It just took time and curiosity, to be honest. The deeper you go, the more you appreciate, because this isn't just a dish, it is the result of generations of family pride. Finally, we have the one I am very excited to show you. It's probably also the one that I find the most beautiful of today's collection. And that is the Digoin and Sarreguemines soup tureen, or also called soupière. So again, when we're going to take a look at the mark of this piece, we will notice that again, there is no country name. So we are definitely thinking pre-1914, but let's see what the internet can tell us that the mark can't. So for this, we're going to use Google search, which is honestly an incredible tool. I don't know how we could live without it anymore. But basically what we're going to do is we are going to Google search the piece as a whole, and we're going to be finding pieces that might be very similar or even almost identical. A good tip that many people tend to forget when using Google search, which is something that makes it even better, is that besides from using your phone to position it and point it towards the mark or even the piece itself, is that you can also decide to type in extra information in it, and this way it will be easier for Google search to find the piece. So for example, I Google search this piece, but I write next to it as well Digoin and Sarreguemines, and this way Google search will basically filter out most pieces and go more specific and more deep in your search. Whereas if you wouldn't do that, it would just recommend pieces that look like this, so just reproductions, things that are available on Amazon. By pressing on your results, you can find out more information on a piece that is very similar to yours, and that means it basically gives you more information as a whole. So by doing this, you can find out the country of origin, so it's very clear that when you look up this mark that it is from France. You can find out the value by seeing how much it is listed for. You can find out whether the seller that is selling it to you is overcharging you or whether you can find it somewhere cheaper. You can find out so many things, and basically what I found is that it is from Digoin and Sarreguemines, which is very popular in France, and these are highly collectible and many people are looking for Sarreguemines pieces. We know that it is older than 1914 based on the lack of country listed on it. Comparing it to pieces that look similar and that are also from France, these pieces tend to be from around 1900 to 1910. This is truly the power of the internet, so do not forget to use what we have access to right now. It is so much easier now than it was back in the day. And then there's also pieces that have no marks at all, which happens quite often, to be honest. No mark doesn't mean it's less valuable than a piece that does have a mark, which is something that many people tend to forget. A good thing to know is that I found this piece in a small antique shop in Rouen, France. So when you are doing the sourcing yourself and you didn't find this online, then your location is honestly your first major clue. If you find a piece in the heart of France, then your first logical assumption would be that it is French. Of course, Europe is a crossroads of history. You can easily find an Italian piece in France or a German piece in Belgium. It happens all the time. But if you've done the work, you've checked Google Lens, you searched for keywords, you flipped through a bunch of books that are basically made to help you with this, and yet you still don't have a definitive answer, then go with the highest probability. If there are no marks and the style aligns with the region and the style aligns with similar pieces that you found through Google search but are not exactly the same, then it is most likely French or at least European. So now let's talk money. So how do you value these pieces that we discussed here today? And whereas I mentioned before that you can find listings of pieces through Google search and based on that find out what the value of the item is, I cannot stress this enough, but an asking price is a wish, a sold price is a fact. So when you're at a flea market and you find a piece and you're quickly going to Google search it, don't look at what people are asking for this piece, but really truly find how much this piece was sold for. And many times it is quite easy. For example, you can find so many pieces on Etsy that are already sold, but you can still see the selling price. You can find so many auction archives of what a piece was sold for. So when you filter for sold items, then that is the real market value. So it keeps you from overpaying and it also helps you price your own items fairly. And then if the internet fails, as in you cannot find anything at all about this piece whatsoever, you can always go back to the most trustworthy sources of them all. One of those that I would recommend is the Kovels Dictionary of Marks. They actually have two versions. One of them is from Marks until 1850 and the other is from 1850 to the present. Most likely, unless you're very lucky, probably the book from 1850 to present is going to be the most helpful to you, as in pieces from before 1850 will be less likely to find, and especially at a fair price. So this definitely helps you as it identifies over 3,500 marks. So I've put the link for both of these books in the description down below, as well as on my Amazon storefront. They are an investment in your education for sure. And the more you know, the more treasures you'll find that everyone else will be walking past. Then if none of that worked either, if you truly believe that what you're holding has significant value and you are desperate to know the truth, don't be afraid to go to an appraiser. But for most of us, using our geographic instinct together with all the other tools that are available, in addition to the tips I gave you today, you will find like 95% of the time the information that you need. And if you don't, many times that is also quite positive. If you don't find anything about it and it has a little bit of aged patina, can you imagine how valuable the piece might be? So the deeper you go in each and every one of these pieces, the more the pieces speak to you, in my opinion. I'm very happy to say that these 4 tureens, as well as many other items, will be available on Maison Amaranth when it officially launches in March. I can't wait for you guys to see the shop. I'm working really hard to make it work, and I hope you guys are all going to love it as much as I do. And yes, for the people overseas, I will be doing worldwide shipping. So if you love these deep dives into the technical sides of antiquing, or you want to join me on my sourcing trips through France and Europe, then please hit that subscribe button. This is a community for people who believe that a home should be filled with stories and not just things. So to make sure you get first pick of this collection before it sells out, head down to the description down below or the link in my bio to sign up to our newsletter. Our subscribers will get early access to all the pieces before anyone else. In one of my next videos, I will be taking it a step further. We will be discussing how to tell if your piece is fine porcelain or heavy ironstone or even faience. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. See you. Bye.